Bonjour, welcome to Wahsa Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is SVN3E, grade 11 workplace science, and I am Bronwyn Slade. If you'd like to participate live today, you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You can listen on the radio at 91.9 FM and also on the television at Bell Express View, channel 972. You are always welcome to join me live through the Zoom link, which is available from me, the teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled Monday through Thursday from 10 to 11 in the morning, and we are starting our 4th week of our 9-week course. At this point, you should be thinking about what work you should be submitting. So a reminder, the key questions are listed at the end of each of your IL lessons. So you need to do all of them. Some are check your understanding questions, some are activities, some are review questions. I want you to explain your ideas and thoughts in complete sentences so I really understand what it is that you're talking about, and make sure that you are actually answering the question. You can do this by hand or electronically. Feel free to write in your workbook if you want, it is yours. However, the space is pretty small, so I wouldn't encourage you to send me your complete answers in your workbook. I write it out by hand on a separate piece of paper. If you're going to do it electronically, sending me a PDF, a Word, or a Google Doc file are all pretty easy for me to open and mark. If you aren't able to do it with any of those files, just let me know and I can make sure that I can open the file that you do want to send me. Okay, so how do you actually submit your work for marking? So the first method is to send electronically. If you're writing it out by hand, scan your completed work, and you can, if you have a device, you can use either an Apple device has the Notes app, which is free, and the Android device has a Google Drive app, which is free, and both have scan functions that are pretty much just point and click. Then you can send it to me through email at studentwork@nnec.on.ca and CC it to me, bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca, or you can send it to me through Facebook Messenger at bslatewahsa. Our second method is to drop your work off in Sioux Lookout. We have an outdoor mailbox at 74 Front Street. We're the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. We are not yet open to the public, so you do need to just drop it off in that mailbox, and hopefully soon we will be open so you can actually come in and talk to me and hand it directly to me if you want, but not yet. The third method is to hand your work into your DEC. Your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. Students are also welcome to fax in their work if they have access to a fax machine. If you'd like to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel are under the name bslatewahsa. So you can friend me on Facebook and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Then you'll get notifications every time I upload one of our lessons. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and I post them on YouTube shortly after airing under a playlist called SVN3E, and then I share those on Facebook as well, so it's a really easy way to access all of our previous lessons. Science is really visual. I do my best to incorporate as many videos, diagrams, graphics, charts, things like that in our course to really help you understand the full deep concepts. Just listening to me or just reading the IL booklet, I find, or the workbook, I find isn't really a great way to get the full experience, whereas doing a bit more interactive helps you understand deeper. If you're unable to access the videos either live through Zoom or by getting the recordings on YouTube, let me know and I can send you a copy of the recordings so that you don't have to have internet access. So if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out and contact me. My email address is bronwyn.slate, and that's spelled BRONWYN.SLATE@nnec.on.ca. My Facebook is bslatewahsa. Call me at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Though if you can't connect with me during those hours and you really need to talk to me, leave me a message or send me an email and we can arrange a time that works for both of us outside of that time frame. I believe it's really important to position myself within the context of this course as it shapes who I am as a teacher and how I understand education. I have white settler ancestry, I have white privilege, and this structures the way that I walk in the world. I realize this. It has meant that my experience of education has been much easier than many other folks, and I've had to deal with less barriers. This isn't something that I can change. I can never get rid of my white privilege, but I can work and commit to dismantling these systems of oppression as much as I'm able to. So it is something that is important to me, and I work towards doing that within this context of this course. I live in Northwestern Ontario on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people, and I work to recognize and honor the teachings and the culture in my area in order to try to figure out how to integrate that into this science course. Again, it's not something that I have figured out completely or I know exactly how to do. It's a process, but as an educator, I have lots to learn and unlearn, and I am committed to doing this journey and doing this work. But if anyone has any feedback or suggestions on how I could do better or resources on ways that I can do better, please let me know, and I'm happy to do that work. Our textbook I also find is Eurocentric, and it ignores Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis knowledges as well as experiences. This is highly problematic as it erases the experiences of many people and sets the white experience, the Eurocentric experience, as the sole experience and as the way of knowing and understanding. So this isn't great. I have not found another resource. I'm looking and trying to figure out how to change this course in order to reflect the wealth of knowledge from Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis communities, as I think that is really beneficial and would be is a great perspective to take on environmental education. So we are continuing on Unit 3 today, which are the environmental effects on humans. So we've talked about how the factors of the environment can cause diseases in humans, and today we're moving forward to look at how the contaminants enter your body. So how we've talked about how they are, contaminants and toxins are in the environment, but then how do they actually enter the human body and have an impact on us is what we're looking at today. So our goals at the end of this lesson is that you'll understand how the human body functions, which is a little bit of a separate tangent. It's a little bit more biology opposed to environmental science, but then you'll be able to describe how the human body defends itself against contaminants. And understanding how the human body functions is how you understand that how contaminants get into our body. So the success criteria are that you can explain how the respiratory, digestive, skin, and circulatory systems work, and you can explain how the human body's systems defend against contaminants, but also how they are vulnerable to them. So doing some harmless things like breathing air, drinking water, enjoying dinner and food, cleaning up your neighborhood, may be exposing yourself to pollutants, poisons, and pathogens. These environmental contaminants have come into our surroundings due to our activities. They are contaminants because they do not naturally exist in our surroundings or not at the levels created by our activities. Once in our environments, they can get into our bodies by various ways and seriously harm our health. So first, we're going to look at how this happens through the respiratory system. So the respiratory system is breathing. Inhalation is equal to breathing your air in, and exhalation is breathing air out. You need both to live, but how does it actually work? So when you inhale, you take air in through your nose or mouth, and from there it goes through passageways connected your nose and mouth to your lungs. These passageways are your pharynx, trachea, and bronchial tubes. These words, I'm not always great at saying these science words. I'm working on it. A chest muscle called the diaphragm contracts to make this happen. When it relaxes, shortly afterward, it forces air from the lungs back through your mouth or nose. So here is a graphic that shows the respiratory system. So your nasal cavity, your mouth is wet. So this is your nose, and then this is your mouth, and so then this is inside of your body. Still, your pharynx is your throat, and then your esophagus. No, not your esophagus. I don't know that word. I'm not going to say that one. Anyway, and then continues into your lungs through your trachea, which is also called your windpipe, and your bronchial tubes, which are connected to your lungs. So, as you can see in this diagram, all of this is connected to your respiratory. This is all your respiratory system, your lungs, and all of these parts. And this system brings the air from your environment into your body. The bronchial tubes that lead into your lungs branch into smaller and smaller tubes inside your lungs, and eventually they end in tiny sacs called alveoli. The alveoli are surrounded by a network of very fine blood vessels called capillaries. The walls of the alveoli and capillaries are so thin that gases pass between them. Sorry if I'm pronouncing things wrong. It's awful when teachers pronounce things wrong, as then you believe that they are right. Any of this language, if it doesn't sound quite right to you or you're not sure, try to do like an online search for pronunciation. This is a struggle. This is an area that I struggle with, is sounding out words that I'm not as familiar with or not part of my daily use, and then pronouncing them, even if I look it up, that I forget. So don't trust my pronunciation. Go check it out if you're interested. All right, so then we're diving in closer to those areas that I was just talking about. So oxygen in the air passes through the alveoli walls and dissolves into the blood. The blood transfers this oxygen to your body cells to allow them to carry out cellular respiration. This is the process by which cells combine oxygen with sugar to get energy. The waste products from this reaction are carbon dioxide and water. Your blood transports the carbon dioxide and water to the capillaries, covering the alveoli, and they are then transferred to the lungs and exhaled. This all happens like super fast, right? So this is inside of your lungs, and then these tubes are your artery is coming into your lungs, and then oxygenated blood goes out of this vein. And so it gets, the veins go around, or the arteries and veins go around your capillaries, are attached to the capillaries, which are go around your alveolus, and then the oxygen is transferred to them, and then they go back out to your body. And so this is an even closer up view where you can see the oxygen is coming out into your blood, and then your oxygen deficient blood cells come in, transfer the carbon dioxide back into your lungs, oxygen goes into your blood cells, and then your blood goes out to the rest of your body. So let's look at a video to see how this actually works in action. TED-Ed videos are awesome. I love them. And so this will maybe make a little bit more sense to actually see it opposed to just looking at stagnant diagrams.
Many of us have hundreds of things on our minds at any moment, often struggling to keep track of everything we need to do. But fortunately, there's one important thing we don't have to worry about remembering: breathing. When you breathe, you transport oxygen to the body's cells to keep them working, and clear your system of the carbon dioxide that this work generates. Breathing, in other words, keeps the body alive. So how do we accomplish this crucial and complex task without even thinking about it? The answer lies in our body's respiratory system. Like any machinery, it consists of specialized components and requires a trigger to start functioning. Here, the components are the structures and tissues making up the lungs, as well as the various other respiratory organs connected to them. And to get this machine moving, we need the autonomic nervous system, our brain's unconscious control center for the vital functions. As the body prepares to take in oxygen-rich air, this system sends a signal to the muscles around your lungs, flattening the diaphragm and contracting the intercostal muscles between your ribs to create more space for the lungs to expand. Air then whooshes into your nose and mouth, through your trachea and into the bronchi that split at the trachea's base, with one entering each lung. Like tree branches, these small tubes divide into thousands of tinier passages, called bronchioles. It's tempting to think of the lungs as huge balloons, but instead of being hollow, they're actually spongy inside, with the bronchioles running throughout the parenchyma tissue. At the end of each bronchiole is a little air sac called an alveolus, wrapped in capillaries full of red blood cells containing special proteins called hemoglobin. The air you've breathed in fills these sacs, causing the lungs to inflate. Here is where the vital exchange occurs. At this point, the capillaries are packed with carbon dioxide, and the air sacs are full of oxygen. But due to the basic process of diffusion, the molecules of each gas want to move to a place where there is a lower concentration of their kind. So as oxygen crosses over to the capillaries, the hemoglobin grabs it up, while the carbon dioxide is unloaded into the lungs. The oxygen-rich hemoglobin is then transported throughout the body via the bloodstream. But what do our lungs do with all that carbon dioxide? Exhale it, of course. The autonomic nervous system kicks in again, causing the diaphragm to ball up and the intercostal muscles to relax, making the chest cavity smaller and forcing the lungs to compress. The carbon dioxide-rich air is expelled, and the cycle begins again. So that's how these spongy organs keep our bodies efficiently supplied with air. Lungs inhale and exhale between 15 and 25 times a minute, which amounts to an incredible 10,000 liters of air each day. That's a lot of work, but don't sweat it. Your lungs and your autonomic nervous system have got it covered.
All right, so hopefully that visual of the lungs, actually the movement of the oxygen through the system, helps, opposed to just the static pictures. So then what is the body's defense against inhaled contaminants? Because if we breathe, we can breathe oxygen, but we also breathe other things that we've talked about are in the air. So our nasal passages and upper bronchial tubes are lined with special cells. These cells secrete mucus and have moving hair-like projections called cilia. Cilia. Again, pronunciation, sorry. The mucus traps many particles, bacteria, and dust that we inhale. So here you can see in this diagram, this mucus grabs any particulate, think about fine particulate matter that we talked about before, how this catches it. Cilia move through those particles in waves through the nose and throat. From there, the body can expel them by coughing or sneezing. So however, cilia and mucus can only defend our bodies against low doses of airborne particles for a short time. We have little to no defense against other airborne contaminants like VOCs and pesticides. When our limited defenses are broken down and do not exist, these contaminants can get into our bodies. So here's a diagram where you can see a good air quality. Healthy lungs have open, wide pathways. You can see it's really easy for the oxygen to move through. Whereas if there is a high ozone level, so where there's been lots of contaminants, then the muscle contract and the pathways are narrowed. So where these arrows are, these are smaller, which makes it harder to get the oxygen through and into your bloodstream. All right, so now you can answer the questions on page 71, the check understanding questions 1 and 2. All right, so then how does this happen how do we get contaminants in through our digestive systems? So our digestive system We also need to survive, so we must eat food and drink liquids to live. The process of eating and drinking is called ingestion. When you ingest food, you begin the process of digestion. Digestion involves breaking food down into smaller and smaller pieces in order to get chemical nutrients that your body can absorb. The organs and glands that do this make up your digestive system. So here is a diagram that shows your digestive system. Your mouth is still, and so that's still part of your digestive system, as well as your respiratory system. So digestion begins when you chew your food. In your mouth, food is coated with saliva from your salivary glands. And saliva is a digestive juice that helps to moisten and break the food down. Then you swallow, and food and drink pass through the long tube called your esophagus and into your stomach. So you go through your throat and down your esophagus and into your stomach. Your stomach is a muscular sac packed with glands. These glands secrete a digestive fluid known as gastric juice. The muscles of the stomach churn the food and gastric juice into a thick liquid. The liquid leaves the stomach to enter the small intestine. So that happens through here. This all inside here are the small intestine. The small intestine is a long folded tube. Its walls are lined with muscles, glands, and millions of tiny projections. As the liquefied food enters the small intestine, it is mixed with new digestive substances. These come via the ducts from the liver up here and the pancreas back here behind your stomach. Here's a blown up of seeing this is the liver here, this is the stomach, this is the pancreas, and then here's the gallbladder in here. So the liver is a large red organ that produces bile. Excess bile is stored in the gallbladder down here, and bile helps the body to break down and absorb fats. The pancreas produces substances that break down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It is a very important organ for digestion. These are all things that you need. So the glands in the small intestine produce substances that help complete digestion. They also give rise to the tiny projections called villi that line the intestinal walls. So the villi are broken up into even finer projections. The walls of both are very thin. On the other side of these walls are tiny capillaries again. It is through these walls and capillaries that most nutrients are absorbed. Once in the capillaries, the nutrients and any contaminants that get through are carried to your cells. Food that cannot be absorbed through the small intestine passes into the large intestine. Remember, the small intestine is long, but has a small diameter, and the large intestine is shorter, but has a wider diameter. The large intestine is a muscular tube that is large in diameter, but shorter than the small intestine. It mainly absorbs water from the undigested food, and it also compacts the leftover waste as feces. The muscles in the bottom part of the large intestine or rectum contract to push feces out of our body. This is done through the anus. So that's how you poop. Okay, so again, we're going to watch another TED Talk or TED Ed video about how the digestive system works, again, to sort of watch an animation of how this happens to help you understand all the parts.
Across the whole planet, humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in the human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task: transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half a badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25 centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shapely bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete. TED-Ed is a nonprofit. If you value our work, please consider.
So that shows you, again, all the steps. There's lots of language in there that you don't need to be super comfortable with. Getting the idea of the general process is what's really important for us. Because then how do we connect that to our body's defenses against ingested contaminants? Now that we know how it works, how do we figure out what does it do to protect us? So the first defense that we have against contaminants we might ingest is vomiting. During vomiting, the contents of the middle of the small intestine and up are forcibly thrown out of the mouth. Usually we vomit because something makes us sick. Vomiting lets the body get rid of poisons and pathogens. The second defense is the liver. The liver constantly filters the blood. So it removes poisons such as alcohol and drugs that get across the villi, as well as other pathogens. However, it can only cope with a small amount at a time. Our defense against contaminants in food and drink are limited. So now you can answer the check your understanding questions on page 74, 1 and 2. Okay, so now we're going to look at how it through our skin. So skin structures, how your skin is built, because it's really important, because your skin is the first line of defense against the outside world. When you get hurt, it takes the bulk of the injury, and by doing so, it protects your other body parts. It keeps out insects, pathogens, hot and cold, wet and dry. However, it can also absorb certain oils, gases, and medicine into the body. So here, again, we have a diagram of the skin cell, and we're going to go through the parts, or skin structure. So your skin has 3 different layers. We have the epidermis, which is the top layer up here, so what we see. The dermis, which is this thick middle layer, and the hypodermis, or the subcutaneous layer, which is the bottom layer here. So the epidermis has a top layer of dead cells that you see and a bottom layer of growing cells. The dead cells slowly wear off through normal activity. As they do, cells from the bottom layer replace them. Your hair and nails grow out of deep valleys in the epidermis. So these shafts. Each hair shaft has a subcutaneous or oil gland along its side. The oil from these glands helps to keep your skin moist and healthy looking. The dermis layer, the middle layer, contains capillaries and nerve endings that let you feel sensations. It also has many elastic fibers that connect one another to make connective tissue. This tissue makes the skin thicker and strong. Sweat glands in the dermis help to keep your body cool. The fat cells in the subcutaneous layer help to insulate the body from cold. Right, and now we're going to watch a 10-minute video about the science of skin.
Between you and the rest of the world lies an interface that makes up 16% of your physical weight. This is your skin, the largest organ in your body. Laid out flat, it would cover close to 1.7 square meters of ground. Its purpose may seem obvious, to keep our insides in. But a look beyond the surface reveals that it plays a surprising number of roles in our lives. First, the basics. Skin is the foundation of the integumentary system, which also incorporates your hair, nails, and specialized glands and nerves. Made up of 3 layers, the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, skin's thickness varies from 0.5 millimeters at its thinnest and up to 4 millimeters at its thickest. It also carries out 3 key functions: protecting, regulating, and sensing the world beyond its limits. On a daily basis, its huge surface processes hundreds, if not thousands, of physical sensations, relying mostly on large, pressure-sensitive skin components called Merkel cells. In your fingertips alone, there are 750 Merkel cells per each square centimeter of skin, coupled with over 2,500 receptors that give you your sense of touch. This surface is also the body's first major line of defense. Without it, you'd be a soggy mass of tissue and fluids, fatally exposed to the elements. Skin effectively seals off your insides and also absorbs pressure and shock with flexible collagen that makes up most of its dermal layer. The epidermis is made up mainly of skin cells called keratinocytes that are completely replaced every 4 weeks. As new cells form at the base of the epidermis, older ones are pushed up. When these cells move upwards, they're filled with a hardened protein called keratin. Once they reach the surface, they form a tightly overlapping, waterproof layer that's difficult for invading microbes to breach. Any harmful microbes that make it into the epidermis will encounter Langerhans cells. This group of protective skin cells detects invaders and communicates their presence to resident immune system T cells, which react by launching an immune response. A crucial feature of this immune defense is the several thousand species of microorganisms that inhabit the planes, folds, and crevices of your skin. These microbes, which include bacteria and fungi, thrive in the sebum, an oily substance that's secreted onto the skin's surface by sebaceous glands nestled inside the dermis. These skin microbes keep the immune system in a state of constant surveillance, ensuring that it's ready to react if the body really is at risk. Beyond this protective role, your skin is also a sensory organ that helps regulate your body's temperature, two roles that are closely interlinked. Nerves detect whether your skin is warm or cold and communicate that information to your brain. In return, the brain instructs localized blood vessels to either expand if the body is too warm, releasing heat from the blood through the skin, or to constrict if the body is cold, which retains heat. At any given time, up to 25% of the body's blood is circulating through the dermis, making this process extremely efficient. Under warm conditions, the skin's sweat glands will secrete sweat via ducts onto the surface, transferring heat out of the body. Hair can also be stimulated to conserve or release body warmth. The average human has 5 million hair follicles embedded everywhere on the body except the palms of your hands and soles of your feet. 90 to 150,000 of those are on your scalp, where they help shield the large surface area of your head from physical damage and sunburn. When you're cold, tiny muscles called arrector pili cause hair to stand upright across the body. That's the phenomenon known as goosebumps, and it traps body heat close to your skin. Skin's vast surface isn't just a shield, it also enables us to interact and connect with the world. Its multifunctional layer cools us down and keeps us warm. The integumentary system may be many things, but it's certainly more than skin deep. Now that we've covered your outer shell, want to get to know your insides a little better? Check out this playlist with some of our...
All right, so that shows how important and intricate our skin is. Okay, so then what about absorption? How does your skin get attacked? So skin can absorb oils, tar, alcohols, cleaning products, and pesticides. These substances can harm the skin's layer and get into the capillaries. Like the contaminants that get into the blood through the respiratory and digestive systems, they can be carried to the body's cells. The harm to your health from any of these points of entry, inhalation, digestion, or absorption, can be serious. So let's look at the circulatory system, which they briefly talked about at the end of the video. Your circulatory system consists of your heart, arteries, veins, and capillaries. It carries your blood from the cells of your body. So in this diagram, which is super simplified, so your heart is here in the middle of your body, the middle of your chest, and then arteries are your red, and they are coming from your heart, and the veins are the blue, and they're going back into your heart. So the heart is a pump that moves blood through the arteries and capillaries. This blood is returned to the heart through the veins. The blood carries oxygen and nutrients and sometimes contaminants to the cells of your body. Contaminants spread through the circulatory system. So in addition to the other duties, your blood fights pathogens like bacteria and viruses that can get through your skin when it's wounded. The wounds that penetrate the skin are the most serious. They may be caused by sharp objects or insects and animal bites. Contaminants that get into your blood can harm it. They may also be carried to your body's other organs, tissues, and systems. For example, your nerve system, which includes your brain, may be affected. Contaminants in the blood can lead to serious health problems. All right, and that gives us an overview of how contaminants get into your body through inhalation, ingestion, and absorption. So let's look at the highlights of today's lesson. So we looked at different body systems to understand them. So the respiratory system, the digestive system, your skin system, and then also your circulatory system. And we talked about how these systems work, but also how they take in contaminants because they're just taking in what's available. And then we talked about how your body defends, how your body protects itself. So they defend against small amounts of contaminants, but if our systems become dysfunctional, we lose our defenses. Or if there is a higher and higher amount of contaminants, then our bodies cannot filter these or protect ourselves against them. So with today's success criteria, hopefully you can now explain how the respiratory, digestive, skin, and circulatory systems all work. And you can explain how the human's body systems defend against contaminants, but also how they are vulnerable to them. And now you can do the review questions on page 77, questions 1 through 13. Again, I will also see if I can find a page or a link or something, an online resource that has proper pronunciation, as I know that I messed up a bunch, and this language isn't language that most of us use in our day-to-day lives, but it'd be nice to know how to actually say many of these words. So I hopefully can find a resource that I can just put in our show notes, so that's pretty easy and accessible to find all of these different terms. All right, so if you have any questions, please reach out and contact me. Other than pronunciation, I'll work on that, I promise. You can call me at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. You can email me at bronwyn.slate, and that's spelled BRONWYN.SLATE@nnec.on.ca. Connect with me through Facebook at bslate-wahsa, and then remember, all of our lessons are put up on YouTube, as well as links. I put in our show notes, I'll put the links and supplementary videos of all those TED Ed videos, so you can go and check them out from the original sources if you want, and potentially link to other videos that you may be interested in. All of that you can find through my YouTube channel. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you would like to connect, reach out to me during that time. Though if that doesn't work for you, just let me know and we can see if we can accommodate you to figure out a time that we can connect that works for both of us. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a lovely day and rich.